Now, something I often think about is how I actually would have invested if I could go back in time 9 years ago when I first started buying dividend paying stocks and ETFs. How would I have invested my initial cash balance in my original brokerage account, knowing what I know now after almost a decade of investing? Now, I'm 32 years old and I started dividend investing 9 or so years ago, buying dividend paying stocks and ETFs every single day, more or less, that the stock market's been open. Now, I started off investing with a relatively small balance, and then over the last decade or so, reinvested every single dividend along with kept contributing more and more outside income to my portfolio, to the point to where as of right now, I currently have around $1.6 million invested across 58 different positions, which collectively pay me around $100,000 per year in dividends. Now, I say all that to say that in this video, I'm going to share with you guys what I would do if I knew everything that I know now as a millionaire dividend investor that's been investing, like I said, for around a decade. Now, trust me, the things I would do now versus what I did originally are very, very different. So especially if you're newer to investing, this video is 100% going to help you. So if you're a dividend investor building a long-term portfolio, make sure to stick around, drop a like down below, and let's get right into it. My A to Z dividend investing ebook has helped countless dividend investors get started with their journey. And my custom dividend tracker that I'm constantly using here on the channel has also helped so many investors stay on track and allow them to see their dividend income in real time. Well, today I have another treat for you guys. I'm not only going to offer you my A to Z dividend investing ebook and the custom dividend tracker, but also just for a short limited time, I'm going to be adding in my brand new weekly dividend blueprint ebook to show you how you can get started with weekly dividend ETFs and add this into your investing strategy. This offer is not going to last long, so go ahead and click the first link down below in my description, and you're going to get both ebooks and the custom dividend tracker bundle. But like I said, please act fast because this won't be around for long. Now let's get back into the video. Now first, some of the things that I actually did in my early days of investing. I was single stock picking, thinking that I could outperform the general market, buying names like AT&T, buying names like Verizon stock, just because they offered more or less higher than average yields, and because I didn't know any better as a new dividend investor, I thought that's more or less what you were supposed to do. Now, if I decided to not do that during the early days of my investing career and just did a few other very, very simple things that I'm going to share with you guys, I would be much, much, much more wealthy than I am today. So to jump right into it, if I were starting over today with a $10,000 balance inside of a brand new portfolio, this is exactly what I would do. Now, this is exactly what you should do also, especially if you're in the earlier days of your investing career. You first should try to figure out what your actual objective is. Now, my objective since the beginning of my investing career has more or less stayed the same. I always wanted to build a portfolio that was going to solve for various different things. On one hand, I wanted this portfolio to pay me consistent income, whether it's on a quarterly or monthly basis. I wanted dividend income from day one. Now, on top of that, if that income is going to be relatively tax efficient, tax friendly, let's say qualified dividend income and or return of capital, for example, those are two more tax friendly ways to get paid income a lot sooner. Now, on top of all that, buying names, buying stocks or ETFs that at least historically have grown their dividend over time allows my portfolio to at least have a shot to keep up with the rate of inflation. And especially if you buy into names that do have consistent high dividend growth, that is going to be very, very helpful for your portfolio to compound later. Now, even beyond all that, I still wanted my portfolio sort of secondarily or lastly to grow over time, which it definitely has. A lot of investors constantly ask me about my portfolio and they say, has your portfolio went down over time because you are sort of solving for high income? And the reality is that if I only chased high income stocks and ETFs, maybe that'd be the case, but I own tons of different lower yielding, higher growth assets across my portfolio also. So just because this is my objective, this is not necessarily your objective, but I promise you it's going to help you to do this early on. Grab a piece of paper, write down your actual objective. What are you trying to solve for? Are you looking for much more growth? Are you looking for much more income? Is tax efficiency something that's very important to you? Is dividend growth not so important to you, etc., etc.? Now, the cool thing is that once you figure out what your objective is, you basically go throughout the market and find different stocks and ETFs that match what your objective is looking for, and it makes investing much, much easier. Now, the first thing I would do if I could go back in time is not single stock pick, not buy into higher yielding junk single stocks just because they offer, say, 5, 6, 7% yield. I would right from day one want to start building exposure to the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. Now, again, this is just my opinion, but the NASDAQ and the S&P are a nice, cozy place to have exposure to in the market just because historically they both have moved basically up and to the right. Now, I heard this from an older investor recently. They said that if for whatever reason, if this were to be the case, if the S&P 500 and or the NASDAQ went to zero, we would have much, much bigger problems on our hands. And at that point, the world would probably be melted. So now you guys are probably saying, well, be more specific. What would you actually invest into if you were starting over today? Knowing what you know now as a millionaire dividend investor, I would instantly buy a small portion of QQQ, even though this is not a dividend ETF whatsoever. Now, even though, like I said in my portfolio, I'm solving for income, tax efficiency, dividend growth, and of course growth, I would use a small portion of my portfolio, even as a more dividend focused investor, and buy some of the Invesco QQQ just to have some NASDAQ 100 exposure through a growth instrument. Now, as far as building the foundation, I would number 2 also add a ton of VU to the portfolio. Exactly how much? I would have to think about it, but probably at least 20% of the portfolio would have to be into the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, an ETF that only offers a 1.2-1.3% yield, so it does actually pay a dividend, of course, but is much more growth oriented and honestly just a very solid foundation. Not to mention, if I bought a ton of VU when I started investing around 9 years ago, I'd be up significantly on this one asset alone. Now beyond that, I would look for covered call ETFs like SPYI or even like SPYI's brother or sister QQQI, two ETFs that offer NASDAQ 100 and S&P 500 exposure, but through a high income strategy. Now because I'm looking for income, because I'm looking for tax efficiency, dividend growth, and growth, ETFs like these two aren't necessarily going to solve for all 4 of those things that I'm looking for, but they are going to pay me a ton of income very tax efficiently right off the bat. And the cool thing is that owning different sorts of assets like some VU or even like some SPYI on top of that, you're going to get a diverse portfolio that's going to have some growth characteristics and some high income characteristics all in one simple portfolio. Now beyond the S&P 500 and NASDAQ exposure, if I knew what I knew now, I would simply invest in high income curated ETFs like OMA or even like QTVO, for example, ETFs that have really strong strategies, really strong objectives, and that offer exposure to super high quality names, but still pay you a boatload of income every single month. Now, a very simple yet effective strategy like that would be how I would do things if I could, of course, go back in time or start over, which is a simple $10,000 invested into the markets. Now, the funny thing is, well, not very funny to me, but when I started investing, I did not do any of this. I did almost the exact opposite. I did not focus on the index. I did not focus on the S&P or the NASDAQ. I did not focus on high quality curated basket holdings. I was just buying single stocks that were offering a 5, 6, 7, 8, 10% yield. Now, the cool thing is that after you build out an initial strong foundation, let's call it $5,000 or $10,000 from there. And then beyond that, if I decided to do some single stock picking or I wanted to get sort of crazy with some ETF picks, I think that's totally okay. But I do think that to build a strong house, you need a strong foundation. And that's why I 100% would stick to the index. And that's why if I could go back in time, I would 1000% stick to S&P 500 and NASDAQ exposure right off the bat if I could go back in time. And then maybe later on, once I build out a strong base, we could then maybe go from there. Now, the cool thing about the stock market is that it's never too late to change your mind on your strategy or even some of the holdings you have in your portfolio. I mean, heck, there's tons of different holdings in my long-term portfolio, as you guys can see right here, that I'm planning on selling very soon and moving the money into something I like better. But the reality is that if you start off investing and you have a strong foundation from day one, it's going to be much, much easier to build on top of that later on. So now that we talked about what I would do as a millionaire dividend investor, if I could of course go back in time somehow, some way, I most importantly want to hear from you guys down below. What stocks and or ETFs are you currently buying like crazy to build out a strong foundation in your portfolio? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.